Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Soul Empowerment. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, and I'm delighted to be here with my two co-hosts, Gail Nowak and Sarah Jane. We today are going to embark on our episode number 62, and today our topic is how to be selfish. Although it's not really spelt that way. It's spelt S.E.L.F.ish. Now, why did we do that? Well, because we think that the idea of selfishness in the context of capital S all the way through has to do with what we call the spiritually empowered life force. And that is essentially what we all, I think all of us around the planet ultimately want to reconnect to, even if we're not necessarily aware of that. So anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm excited to get started. But before I do, I'm going to ask my co-hosts to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with you today, Gail. Please introduce yourself. Tell us where you are, what you are, who you are, where you are, what you do, and why. There we go.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Gail Nowak. I'm based in Massachusetts, just a little north of Boston. And I am a communications and emotional wellness coach. I love this topic, and I love how we reframed selfish today, or how we're going to reframe selfish today. I personally, in my business, I help spirit-led coaches and healers and leaders in the wellness space create authentic, healthy business relationships without hiding or silencing themselves, so that they can communicate boldly and lead lovingly and make the world a better place. And sometimes that means being selfish in the context that we're talking about today, and in the context of really sort of putting yourself first, right? So I use an energy first, healing centered approach to my work. And really, I'm passionate about helping more entrepreneurs really move away from hiding in plain sight and showing up as bold and gentle leaders in this new paradigm that we're experiencing. So if you want to talk more with me, I'm always open to a conversation. You can find me over at my website at gailnowak.com.
Beautiful. Thank you, Gail. And yeah, I love that. Yes, sometimes we leaders have to learn to be selfish. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that reminder. And of course, Sarah Jane, would you please introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, where you are, what you do, and why.
I am me. And somebody who has learnt to say that and to believe that and to say, do you know what? I have to do what is right for me. But Sarah Jane is who I am. I'm in the UK on the south coast in a not so little place called Bournemouth, but it's still a town and not a city. And I work with energy. I work with a Reiki master. I also work with sound, with toning, a technique I call vocal Reiki that I have discovered over the years of working with it supports people to reconnect with their inner child, their younger self, that hurt, traumatized aspect of themselves that in most cases has felt abandoned, rejected, unloved, unwanted, unworthy. You get the gist. And supporting them to reconnect with that child and support that child to heal, their inner child to heal, to feel listened to feel heard, to feel loved. And I found, as I've worked on myself because of my own sort of story and the childhood traumas I went through, as the child feels listened to, heard and loved by yourself, by the adult you, the child grows in confidence of themselves. You know, how many children have gone through traumas actually have no confidence in themselves at all. And so they're more easily manipulated, abused, coerced, etc., etc. So the idea is to support people to get to the root of where they had the lack of confidence, to get to that space today that builds their own confidence. And I know how much difference it's made in my life. So I'm talking from experience, not from, I just think this is a good idea, because
Right.
it really does support people on such a deep cellular memory level. And selfish. I actually don't like the word because I think it is so misused. The majority of people who use the word selfish are actually projecting. So I love the fact that
Well,
we
hey,
come
now, before we get into the conversation, before we do that, I just wanted to say thank you for all that you do in the world. I wanted to say thank you for that inner child work, which I think is really, really important. And I know I've done a fair bit of that on my own, and also with Sarah and with other people. And it's really powerful stuff. And you're right, Sarah. We're going to get into this topic. So I just wanted to make sure that we all had a chance to introduce ourselves first. And I haven't ever actually introduced myself in the same way that you have. I just say I'm a certified master life coach. Well, what the hell is that? You know, what is a certified master life coach? Well, it just means that I've got lots of letters behind my name. That's all it really means. However, what I do is I work with adult men and women who have been struggling. They find that they're just not having the kind of life they want. And what I try to do is I try to help them work through their own limiting beliefs, their misunderstandings about who they really are. I try to help them come to that truth of who they really are so that they can begin to love themselves, accept themselves, and step more fully into the deepest possible expression of that being. And then share whatever it is they're here to share, some kind of gift. We all have gifts. And it's called a gift because you're supposed to give it away. That's the whole thing, you see. And so what I try and do is help people find that gift. And when we're stuck in a place of not really knowing who we are, if we're spending all our time trying to satisfy other people's expectations of who we think they want us to be, well, we're not really giving them what they really need, are we? We're not giving them the true full expression of who we are, and we're thereby denying them the experience of having a full experience, say, of David, whatever David is, or Gail, whatever Gail is, or Sarah, whatever Sarah is. That is basically what I do. And I love it because I think there is nothing more important than knowing the truth of who you really are. Everything else emanates from that. And so with that all said, now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. And go ahead, Sarah. You were anxious and jumping at the bit there to talk about this selfish thing. So go right in.
All I was going to say was that selfish is when people say it to someone else, it's usually about projection. I encourage people to actually think about themselves first, because you cannot pour from an empty pot. So sort of the clients that come to me, it's give yourself me time. Give yourself that space. That's all I was going to say. And then I was going to let you jump in. So
fair
yeah,
enough.
that's
but it seemed like we were getting involved in the conversation, which, okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
And by
enough.
the way, I agree with you. I think that when we use that word selfish, the lowercase version that we were talking about, that's often what it means. When I say to somebody, you're being selfish, what I'm really saying is you're not paying enough attention to my needs, my wants, my desires, you know? And what is that but selfishness in its manifestation? Therefore, I'm projecting my selfishness onto the other person. It's really quite amazing. And what I have found is when I have been willing to look at my projections more carefully and begin to see what it is I'm actually perceiving on the other person, I often, almost always say, yeah, I got that inside me. When I'm honest, that is to say. Certainly before I started doing personal growth work, my ego mind was very, very quick to say, no, that's not like me at all. I'm not like that. I'm a really nice person. I'm a fantastic person. I would never, ever behave that way. But the truth is, whatever we can see on someone else, we can only see because we have it somewhere inside ourselves, whether we acknowledge it or not. And that's really what I think projection is all about. What do you think, Gail?
I feel like there's a caveat to this, but generally speaking, yes. Oftentimes, those things that we see in others that maybe don't sit quite right with us, or that we feel, that we want to judge or trigger us, I do believe that there's an opportunity there. I recently had a conversation a few months back about how triggers are teachers. And so when something comes up and somebody didn't meet a need, or broke a promise, or we're feeling like they're behaving in a selfish way, and we're like really irritated about that, and maybe from a place that is either beyond what's actually happening, or maybe it's not even happening, it's just something that's happening in our mind. Generally speaking, yes, I think that's from within us. I think that there's some caveats of also being on a journey of, if you are using those triggers, to go within and reflect within about, why is this bothering me? Why is their selfishness bothering me? And being radically honest with yourself, and you're getting information about that. I think it then becomes a journey of discernment and refinement, because we might still see those things that bother us in other people, because yes, maybe that was a projection of ours that we see in others that bothers us. But at some point, if you're actually going within and you're asking those questions of yourself, you might still see it. It might not have the same impact on you, or maybe it does, or maybe it's very clear that, wait a minute, actually, this is not necessarily me projecting, like this is something that actually is not okay with me. And I know that's super subtle and nuanced, but I think that a lot of times there's these concepts in the spiritual community that are mainly generally true. And I do think that sometimes it's worth going into the weeds and going into the details a little bit more, because it's on a spectrum. It's on a spectrum. If you're doing the work, right? If you're doing that inner work and you're doing that healing work, you might have a similar circumstance or situation come up, and your response to it may be similar and may be different. It may not have the same power or the same hold over you. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh gosh, I'm seeing this in that person, and so that means that that's something within me, from the standpoint of, oh, this is actually my problem and not theirs, when in fact it might actually be a problem for you in the way that they're being. I hope that was clear, but it's definitely something I've been grappling with since our conversation, because I do think that, if you're sort of just going through life and shifting blame and responsibility, yes, what's getting reflected back at you might be something you want to take a look at. Otherwise, I think
that's
like if
actually,
you're on that journey,
yeah, yeah.
it's
I get
maybe
it.
more of like
I agree with pretty much everything you
time.
said. I just wanted to point out, there's a, just because all right, one of the ways that I remember this is, all judgment is projection, but not all projection is judgment. In other words, I don't have to have any kind of a triggering reaction or any kind of an emotional reaction just because I happen to see something on another person, right? I don't have to react to it at all. And the more work I do on myself, the less triggering that kind of behavior can be for me. So what I am saying is, because of the nature of our physical being, and because we have these five senses, anytime if I reach out there and touch something, my mind is saying the thing I'm touching is out there. But the reality is, the thing out there doesn't even have to exist, and I could still have the same experience of touching. This is what I mean by, everything is projection. Everything is projection, because I am being fed constantly through the five senses of my physical body, plus my intuition and other senses that, that happen. And I'm sure all of us have those experiences as well. We're getting information from all kinds of different places, and all of them are somehow trickling into our awareness. And what's coming with those awarenesses is some kind of positional time data in the space-time continuum. That's how we interpret stuff. That's how we make sense of the world around us. So to say that everything is projection is an accurate statement. To say that whenever I project something, I am actually seeing a part of myself. Well, if you think about other things that we've talked about, where we are all one, it's not just a bumper sticker. I think we've come to an agreement on that. We are all connected energetically. And therefore, my experience is your experience, even though you don't necessarily have the visceral, emotional, aspects that happen. This is it's, as you said, it's subtle. It's very, very fine-tuned, and it's something that we don't necessarily think about unless we have these weird kind of highfalutin philosophical conversations. So that's just my perspective. Sarah, I'm sure you've got a completely different perspective. Why don't you share it with us?
Well, no, I think, to be perfectly honest, if it triggers us, it really has an impact on us, then is it about projection? But if we can look at something and sort of just be quite calm and sort of about it, it's just like, okay, I'm not saying I don't go into judgment. I attempt not to go into judgment. I attempt at things and sort of think, okay, what reasons could there be behind this? And think about it. But I suppose in some respects, that's still a judgment. But I'm trying to stay out of the immediate reaction I might have, if you like. We encourage people to do what feels right for them. Somebody asks you to do something and you say no. You do not have to give a reason. The problem is I've got to find an excuse. I've got to find a reason of why I can't do that. I can't just say no. But we have to do what feels right to us. And if that thing goes against the grain with us, or we genuinely don't have time for it, I think it's about, are people being honest with themselves to start with, and then with us? So you've asked somebody to do something and they say, oh, I'm sorry, I really can't, or that doesn't work for me, whatever, and it's a no. But you're trying to do it a little bit more gently than a flat no. But if you're being asked something and you're not sure how you want to answer, it's ask for time. Ask for time, whether it's half an hour, half a day. I'll answer you tomorrow. Give me a chance to think about it and look and see what I can do, if I can do it. Because we've got stuff going on in our own lives that they don't know about. And so it's giving you the chance to give an honest answer. How many of us, especially the people pleasers of us in the world, say yes and regret it? And I do that so often. I make suggestions and regret it and think, what on earth did you do that for? So we're all very good at doing that, because suddenly we realize the work that's involved in that suggestion we've just made. And so people are telling me, oh, yes, that's a lovely idea. Yes, please. Thank you. And it's just like, oh, what have I done to myself? But that's our choice to do that. And I keep doing it. But that's a choice. But it's honesty. If the answer's no, say no. Don't say yes and let people down. So
or don't say no and let people down.
Well, yeah, but you're saying no, but it's about the honest no. It gives them a chance to go and find somebody else that might help them, or do it themselves, or not get it done at all, because actually it was never that important to them in the first place.
right?
You know, I think
Yeah. I think so. I want to come back to this idea of judgment here for a second, because I think that's an important concept. You know, I this is another thing that I do. I tend to try and simplify things into man logic. So forgive me if it doesn't have the nuances that you like. But I look at it this way. Anytime I use a word that would be classified as an adjective, that's judgment. That's just me putting my own spin on something. So for example, if I say, okay, this is a mouse, you can't really tell much about it, but it's a mouse, okay? Now I say it's a black mouse and it's got this little flashing blue light on it. You might look at it and say, no, it's a gray mouse. But I agree that it's got a flashing light. I'm just not sure about whether it's blue or not. So we can disagree about the color or some of the aspects of this thing, but we can agree that it is a mouse, right? And that's where I think the distinction lies. I mean, is it a fact that this is a mouse, or is that also a judgment? I don't know. I mean, this is an object that has been collectively called a mouse, and that's kind of what we refer to it. When I say the word mouse, if I'm moving my mouse around, you know what I'm talking about. You might, if I don't show you this, you might have an image in your mind of what a mouse on your desk looks like. So they might be different. But you see what I'm getting at? So we make interpretations, conclusions, judgments all the time, assessments, everything. And we're doing it in every single moment of our lives. Even if I go out, and this is a fun experiment I've done with people, I say, okay, just go out and look at the clouds and try to see clouds. And I'll tell you, it doesn't take long, maybe 3, 4, 5 seconds before, if there's clouds around, you see a bunny or a flower or a face, or, you make up some idea when that's not what the clouds are doing. They're just there. They're just clouds, right? And yet we all do that. When we see data, and especially data in patterns, we kind of make it up. We make up a pattern out of it. Hell, I remember having a shower the other day, and I was looking down at the floor of my shower, and I'm saying, that looks like a face. I take a closer look at it, and it's just the way the shadows were moving around. Again, my mind does that. I don't know, maybe your mind does it too. I suspect most people have that experience. But my point is, there's nothing wrong with judgment. There's nothing wrong with interpretation. There's nothing wrong with assessment or conclusion. All right? So we often hear the word judgment and immediately assume it's a negative judgment. Oh, he's judging me. Well, maybe he's judging you really positively. Maybe he's got a very high opinion of you. And we forget about that side because we're so used to judging ourselves harshly and being our own worst enemy in terms of inner critic and all that. So I don't want to scare people away from admitting when they have judgments, right? Think about this, for example. You go outside and you say it's cold. Well, what is cold? What is cold? Cold is a relative term. For someone who lives in Hawaii all year round and it gets down to 65 degrees, that person might say it's cold. If I go outside right now and it's 65 degrees, I'm going to be taking off layers because I find it hot in relative terms. Do you see? So everything has to be taken in a context. And all I can say is this: whenever I have a judgment of another person, it is an opportunity for me to look within and say, okay, what do I see within myself that corresponds to that judgment? Whether it's a positive judgment, a negative judgment, or even a neutral judgment. That is the opportunity. And if I choose to take that opportunity, I might learn something about myself or remember something about myself, as Sarah is wont to say. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's an important concept and something that we all need to look at. We can have a nice, long philosophical conversation about what is a fact and have some disagreements about that, I'm sure. But you see what I'm getting at? I think in general terms, it's helpful if we can just remember that judgment is neither good nor bad. It is just a process of making a determination. Sometimes our judgments can save our lives. You know, if I'm about to cross a street and I think that car is coming too fast, then I'll probably step back and wait for it to go by. Good judgment, probably, because if I ignored that judgment and started walking, I might not be able to finish the sentence. So, yeah. Thank God I don't have any passion about this topic.
I love that you're making these distinctions, David. It's really profound, and it's one of the things that is so great about this program is that we give ourselves this time every month to drill down into some of these deeper concepts. And as you were so skillfully going through judgment and the fact that, yeah, you're right, it's information. It's neither good nor bad. It's what you it's how you put meaning to it that might, tilt the scale as positive, negative.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's information, and our brains, our minds are so good at jumping to conclusions and making assumptions and having negative bias, and having an awareness of that doesn't necessarily eliminate those processes from your life, but having an awareness of it allows us to maybe take a beat and not automatically make assumptions or not automatically make projections, and understanding that, yes, we actually, in fact, have collective agreements about what the sky is, what that mouse is, what a house is, right? But there's talk about facts, like we call those facts.
You're right.
But are they? Like, who says who, right? So this can get really deep and a little trippy, I think. But I just wanted to come back to this piece around having awareness that there are some things that are in play here that we've agreed upon socially, collectively, that can influence us. And again, nothing wrong, nothing good or bad about that. It's simply something to know so that we're not necessarily projecting something unfair or inaccurate onto others as best we can, right? I mean, we are human. We're gonna do, it's part of who we are. And we also have the power in the choice to just have a little bit more awareness around ourselves and others. And I love what we're saying, Sarah, about honesty. I mean, I think that is, it's going to be, I think it's going to be more important than ever as we go along. I mean, it's always been important, but more than ever to be honest with yourself. I mean, this is what's going to get us through whatever we're going through right now, right? Is to really be honest with yourself so that you can be honest with others. It's what you were describing earlier, Sarah. It literally happened to me this morning where I got invited into an opportunity this is me making a judgment. It's a great opportunity and it's not for me. And I had that moment of like, I don't want to disappoint this person, but I know I can't commit to this right now. And the truth is that I didn't want to. And I had to be honest about that. And I even said, I hate to disappoint you, and I don't want to, and I can't commit to this right now. And that's a hard thing to say around people who are healthy and mature. They can hear that and they can respect that and accept that. So just a couple of things that were floating around while you guys were talking.
No, this is great stuff, and we're talking about true selfishness here. even though we haven't actually said it, because we're saying we're trying to be aware of what's going on in here. We're trying to be honest with ourselves. We're trying to be in integrity with ourselves. This is what we're trying to do. And I got just a little question for you, Gail. Something to you for you to think about. How would it be? What would it be like to just say, "Thank you for the opportunity. I'm not interested," and leave it at that, and let
Yeah.
them have their disappointment?
Yeah.
What a gift!
Yeah. And I have done that, and this, it's so funny that you brought that up, because in my mind I just wanted to write no.
Yeah, right.
But then in my mind there was like this whole litany of all the reasons why, and then I was like, I do not need to do, so I found a
Yeah.
happy medium that felt good for me, and could have been shorter, like you said, but it felt, I went from, this is what I really want to say, this is the people pleaser in me, like out here, right, with all the reasons why I need to justify to you why I have to say no, 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 you don't. You're right. You're absolutely right. You do not need to do that.
Yeah.
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 You don't need to explain. You really don't. The true meaning of selfish, as per the dictionary, is it's all about self that could be to the detriment of others. There's no consideration at all to what may happen to others you doing. Now, okay, in some respects, some people say, well, yes, you've just said no to me and it's a detriment to me because you're not doing what I want you to do. There's always going to be that misinterpretation. Every word, people will have a different meaning for that word judgment. They'll have a different perspective, but they'll have a different perspective on the word perspective and projection and conditioning. People are going to have an understanding of a word from the experiences they've had in their life. And selfish is a massive one of those. What have they heard from other people? Have they been called selfish? And so their understanding of the word selfish is that if you don't do what they want you to do, then you're a selfish person. That's their judgment. That's their understanding. That's their perspective. Because unlike me, they've not looked at the dictionary to see what it actually really does mean. But if you go
Well,
and
even
look
the
at,
dictionary, though, is just a consensus.
absolutely, absolutely. But it's selfish is a word that is bandied around, I think, far too easily.
Mhm.
And now we're sort of starting to say, well, come on, sort of really look at it, what it means, and how are we being? If somebody's called us selfish, have we been, or is it? Well, actually, do you know what? No, this is about my energy. This is about me keeping my power rather than giving it away. And I think that's the important thing is, soul empowered life force, SELF. And to be empowered gives us that right to say yes and no as feels right for us. I literally had somebody offer me something this morning. Said, oh, would you like to come and sort of just a 20-30 minute sort of interview? Sort of, I said, and I went back and I said, love to, but it'll have to be after the 1st of April because of the new book. There was no way. I've got to think about my time. They also know I'm doing the book, so I didn't feel. I thought, no, I'm happy to be, but not at the moment. I've got far too much going on. So sometimes you do give a reason because there's an extension, there's an extended time period. Sometimes you go back and you answer and say, that bit doesn't work for me, but how about I would do that for you quite happily. We don't always have to say a flat no, but what are we saying yes to? And does that resonate with us? Because at the end of the day, we all like to support others. But I am a great believer. I'm happy to support people, to support themselves, to help themselves. I'm not here to do it for you.
I've often thought that sometimes maybe the best answer to you're being selfish is something along the lines of, thank you so much for noticing. I've really been working on that because I've always been giving myself away and just, not having any self-respect at all. So I'm so glad that you have noticed. That is such a great, thank you so much for that. And then just walk away. I don't know. It just seems to me that would be like the best answer. Well, maybe not always, but you know what I'm getting at. Especially if people are seeing themselves as they get defensive when they're told they're being selfish. I am not being selfish. I'm just deciding that it's important for me to take care of this little thing over here that's all about me. But no, I'm not being selfish. So they go into this defensive mode, which is not going to help anybody, and that just gives the other person more ammo to say, oh yes you are, oh no I'm not, oh yes you are. I remember I used to say to one of my sons, you're so, what was the word I used, you're such a contrarian. He says, I am not. It was one of those things. I think he understood exactly what I meant when I said you're such a contrarian, because this is Kevin. He's extremely smart. So anyway, we can have fun with it too,
Yeah.
I think that goes back to your point too, David, about, when you know yourself and you're true to yourself, it's a lot easier to, regardless of where the intention is in the other person, to own it.
Right.
Like you're suggesting. I've had people say, oh, you're too sensitive. And that used to bother me, way back, because that was a bad thing in my family. Right. And I finally got to the point where I was like, yeah, I am sensitive. And that's one of my gifts.
Right.
It's what makes me so good at the work that I do. That's why people come to me to seek advice or counsel or guidance or just a compassionate ear. Like, this is a good, I finally recognizing, like, there's nothing wrong with being sensitive. Like, you're benefiting from my sensitivities,
Right.
person who's saying this to me. And you're right. It does sort of take the charge out of it, and the other person makes the other person kind of stop and think like, oh, So it's not only just to sort of have that challenging moment with them. It really is like stepping into owning it, if it's true for you, right? And then on the flip side, Sarah, you said something that made me think of like the impact of overgiving, right? The impact of being afraid of being called selfish, or people thinking that you're selfish. I worked with a client many years ago, and that was a block that came up for her. So generous, so giving of her heart and her soul and her time, and she had this new book coming out. And from my perspective, she had a very easy ask that she wanted to ask, but she wasn't asking it because she didn't want people to think of her as selfish. And this is a person that like just gave abundantly and basically was asking for beta readers. And it was a little, the topic was felt a little edgy for her, but at the core of it, it really was this sense of, I don't want people to call me selfish. And that often comes from, talk about, inner child, right? Like that's the hurt inner child
Exactly
speaking.
right.
And that inner child needs, some love. You need to take a beat and really love up, not necessarily beat yourself up because you're having this moment of like, ooh, I'm feeling like I'm afraid to be viewed as selfish. Okay, well, let's take a look at that, right? Like, where does that come from? How old is that? Who told you? Whose voice is that even, right? And to go in and understand, you don't have to relive it, but to understand that that's not where you are right now. And perhaps that's just that younger you, that little you that was made to feel wrong about having needs, right? And that you're an adult now and you can provide those needs to yourself, and you absolutely deserve to ask for whatever it is.
Exactly right.
And receive whatever comes, right? We're totally capable of that.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Ask for what you want. You may or may not get it. Do not ask for what you want and guarantee that you won't get it.
That old saying, if you don't ask, you don't get.
You don't get. Yeah. I say that to my kids all the time. If you don't ask, you don't get. And when you do ask, you still might not get.
And it's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah. You got a better chance of getting if you ask.
If you ask.
Oh, 100%. Sort of when you were talking, sort of, Gail, it sort of made me think of a situation sort of, and it was very much about letting yourself receive. And of course, as people pleasers, the one thing we don't do is think we're worthy of receiving anything from anyone. And I'm sure I've told this little story before, but sort of, I think it was a lift I was looking for, and it was somewhere I needed to go and really be left. I don't know whether it was to a train station or something. And I just said to Trevor, I'd like to ask you something, but you can say no if you want to. And he really blew up at me. He said, Sarah, just ask. If I can't do it, I'll say I can't do it. And it was just like, okay, sort of. But within a couple of days, I'd got a deck of oracle cards out. And the card that came out was, let yourself receive. And in the wording in that card, if I remember rightly, was basically, we get so much pleasure from giving to others. So give others the pleasure of giving to you. And it was just like, oh, okay. But of course, those negative feelings you have about yourself, you feel unworthy of people giving to you and allowing yourself to receive. So on that, the flip side of the selfish is that you are being selfish when you're stopping people from actually experiencing the pleasure you get from giving to them. So yeah, there are flip sides to all of these things.
I believe it is better to receive than to give. That's flipping the script, and it's basically the same thing as what you just said. It's better because two people get to receive, not just one. And the other thing is, it is an aspect of selfishness to be able to stand up and be willing to say, I am open to receiving whatever it is you wish to give me. Well, maybe not everything that you wish to give me, but within reason. Okay. And the same thing comes down to sharing feedback. One of the techniques I learned at the Human Awareness Institute was about this idea of withholds and appreciations. How often do we have a little nagging issue with someone, and we just say, "Oh, it's not important. I'm not gonna mention it." And then a little later, something else happens. Maybe the next day or something. The same person does something again. Just pass it on. A series of these build up. What you're effectively doing by not speaking up, and you don't know this yet, but you're kind of building a brick wall between you, and it's made out of bricks of energy. And what happens is, at some point along the way, this other person is going to do something that is even smaller and less important than all of these other things that you've been ignoring, and you're going to explode. And that person is going to say, what the? And this happens. I'm sure we've all experienced this. I will bet my bottom dollar that every human being on the planet has experienced this at least once in their life. Now, the question is, how many of us have actually instigated this? Well, I know I have. I absolutely know I have. And once I understood this, that little thing that I wasn't talking about was actually adding up ammunition in my machine gun, which I then used as a machine gun on the person when something really insignificant happened. And so the teaching that we learned from this is, be willing to share your withholds with somebody. And the way you do it is real easy. I would go to Gail. I would say, Gail, I have a withhold that I would like to share with you. Are you open to hearing it? And if you're not, you say so. Because if you're not ready at this moment to hear what I have to say, then it's really pointless. And you could say, yes, I'm open to hearing whatever it is you have to say. Please share it with me. And now it's important for me to share from my perspective and not put anything on you. So I'm going to make this up completely out of the blue here. It's completely random. Well, thank you for being willing to hear my little withhold. I noticed the other day you came in the house and you took off your coat and you just kind of tossed it in the corner. And I ended up picking that up and hanging it up. This reminds me of when I was a kid. And my mom used to do exactly the same thing. And I was required to pick up after her over and over and over again. And so this kind of triggered that old memory inside me. And I started having all kinds of judgments about you and all this kind of stuff. And I just want to own that right now. And I just wanted to share that with you. I don't need anything from you. I don't want you to change any aspect of yourself. I just want you to be aware of that little wound that's inside me. Now, I don't have to ask for anything from you at that point. You now saw something, you saw some vulnerability, and I don't know how you're going to reply to that, but you probably say something along the lines of, wow, well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's all that's really necessary. And you might say something else like, I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm not going to toss my jacket in the corner anymore, or something. You might say that, but you don't have to. You may continue with that behavior. Maybe you might decide, I need a little more work on that little issue. I don't know. But you see, if I say that much, then what I'm doing is I'm relieving myself of the energy of that withhold, and I'm giving myself permission to heal from it. And I'm owning some truth about my own inner wound. Now, every aspect of this is what I would call selfish in the sense that we are talking about today. Because I'm trying to honor the truth of who I am. And my other thing is, I really do want a good relationship with you. I don't want to be harboring these judgments about you and then have them come out in sideways manners when something stupid comes along. So the relationship is important to me. Now, of course, if the relationship's not important, then I probably won't do that with you. But that's generally how you can do it. And the same thing, by the way, with appreciations. How often do we actually stop in our relationship and just say, Gail, I'll do it with Sarah this time. Sarah, I have an appreciation for you that I'd like to share. Are you open to hearing it? Now, most people will immediately stop and say, absolutely. But, you may be busy. Maybe something's going on. You say, yeah, I'll get to you in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. And I might just say, Sarah, I just noticed that you have a quality. I'm projecting a little bit of judgment on you. You have a quality of just being so open and sensitive when people are hurting. And I've noticed that, and I just really, really appreciate it. I just wanted to acknowledge that. Okay. And you can say, well, thank you for noticing that, or something, whatever you want to say. But you see, just by doing that, I am raising my awareness about what I am appreciating, and I'm sharing it with the person or persons who have helped me see that appreciation. You know, I might say more about it, but you see, just doing this, sharing your withholds and your appreciations with people, you have no idea how much you can benefit your relationships by doing that. And by the way, when you benefit your relationship, you are improving your life. It is 100% selfish.
The initial start of that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right. Yeah, we can avoid all those straws if we do stuff like this and take responsibility within our relationships.
So good. That was so good, David. Such great tools. And I love the question of consent, right? Like, are you available? Because sometimes we're really not we don't have that bandwidth, or we're literally doing something else. And it's, for a lot of people, maybe their lifestyle is that they're out and they're working all day, and then they come back home and they're still kind of decompressing from the day's events, and then they get home and it's sort of met with like the family needing this or wanting to share this, and to take that moment, and for everybody to sort of be practicing that question of, oh, are you available? Are you available? That's maybe my term. Are you available?
Right.
But are you open? Are you open to hearing this? That is a magical question. I have truly seen just that one little thing. I mean, everything that you just said, if everybody listening started practicing that, oh my gosh, your relationships would just be off the charts, right? But even just that one question, that's an easy win right there, because it shows the other person that you're aware and you're attuned, and yes, you have something that you want to share with them, and you're also giving them the space to get in the place where they can actually hear you and receive it. So I love that.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those things that it's a little uncomfortable the first time you do it. And you might screw up, you might throw in your judgments and all that kind of stuff. But with practice, it gets easier. And if you can learn to do it, then you and your partner, or anybody that you're in relationship with, you can set up a schedule. I say this is really important for primary partners who are getting together. Set a time, before you go to bed at night. You want to finish the day with appreciation. So maybe set some time before you go to bed to do 5 minutes each of withholds and appreciations. And when you get to bed, who knows what magic can happen then. Anyway.
But then
you're certainly going to wake up feeling a lot better in the morning, I think.
But shouldn't we be doing that appreciation for ourselves?
Of course, and by right,
yeah.
But it's not just when I spend the time to look in myself and find those spots of withhold and appreciation for another person, I am doing that for myself. But I know what you're talking about. You're talking about, what can I appreciate about myself? Well, you can certainly incorporate that as a separate piece with your partner, as part of the same thing. Do my withholds and appreciations of the other person, and now, do I have a withhold or appreciation about myself? Share those as well. Because, the whole point of this is to deepen your relationship and improve your relationship with yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I am very good at praising myself, because nobody else is going to do it. I'm not saying they won't, but sort of, but I do. It's just like, And sometimes I will do it 2-3 times in the day. Sort of just finished my morning's work. I've done really well this morning. Okay, maybe you didn't achieve as much as you'd hope to, but do you know what? You've done really well this morning. And what is it they say? Just appreciate yourself, even if all you've managed to do is get out of bed in the morning, because having gone through the run up to ME, yuppie flu as they nicknamed it, and that was a horrendous place to be, because literally getting out of bed sapped every little bit of my energy. And when you're in that place, so whatever's going on in your life, it isn't a matter, oh, I haven't achieved anything. It's, you know what, if all you've achieved, and I mean, I was off work for 2 months and it took me 2 months to get back to work full time. It really knocked me for 6. So it's accepting these things that happen, even if you don't understand them. But it's being able to say to yourself, you've done really well. There are times I think, okay, I'm not sure what I've managed today, but you know what, I've done well today. Because it's supporting you. You're not waiting, okay, I don't live on my own, but we share a house. So it's not a relationship. It's more like brother and sister, but it's about what I do for me. I'm not looking for what other people say to me. It's really important that we have that for ourselves.
Beautiful. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour here. We've had a really amazing conversation so far. I want to thank you both for your contributions. And I would like to offer you the opportunity to close us out with final words of wisdom around how to be selfish. Gail, would you like to go first?
Yeah, and it's just dawning on me. We didn't really talk about self-care, but this whole episode about being selfish really is about taking care of yourself, right? And so this is a deeper exploration of what self-care can actually look like. Don't get me wrong, I like going to the spa and getting a massage and getting pampered. I love all of that, and self-care really is an ongoing practice, and we've touched on quite a few practices to actually be selfish in the way that we're talking about today, and to take care of yourself first for yourself, right? I think that there's a lot of messaging out there of like, take care of yourself so that you can be your best for others. Well, how about take care of yourself, period?
Period. Right. Beautiful. Thank you. Sarah, would you like to share your final words on how to be selfish?
Yes, but in light language. So that it touches people's hearts and souls, and it's not understood by the ego mind and the monkey mind. So let's see what they've got to share with us. Nit tunokoshti inta aistikanata. Nes tunokostia taste enitia kashia matai. Sir tunaki ish night akat I atastorima sakastia nakatema. Nataka achiomata. Sirokochi I antarikeche. Sort tana este helm tormaki niche. Fe hastanakoichi minakatayana. Ler oikta na tatrai ki kurmagate shi antaranai chiyama. Namaste.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you all for joining us today, for listening to the recording, whatever it is you're doing to get this message. We appreciate your presence. And I just want to remind you that you can watch the recordings of this and every other episode that we do on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. And I just want to say blessings to you on your continuing journey. I wish you love, light, and blessings. And may you learn to love and accept yourself 100% without excuse and without exception. So thank you very much. We'll see you next time on Soul Empowerment. Bye-bye.